Welcome to the Tepper School of Business Multimedia Series. For more information on the Tepper School at Carnegie Mellon, please visit us at www.tepper.cmu.edu/multimedia. And now, here's your selected video.
Thank you all for coming here today. On behalf of the Organizational Leadership Club and the South Asian Business Association, we appreciate your attendance. We have a great event for you today. I'd like to introduce our speaker. He is a Tepper alum. He received his MSIA from Tepper in 1988. He's also the president of the global chemical business at Tata Chemicals Ltd. He is on the board of directors for Huber Materials, and he is also the president's leadership council for Brigham Young University. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome our speaker for today, Mr. DeLyle Bloomquist.
All right, thank you. My presentation today, I was going to run through a couple of lessons that I've learned in business. These are not to take away from the education that you get here at Carnegie Mellon. The $50,000 plus that you guys are spending here every year is going to a good purpose. It's important for you guys to be competent in the fields that you choose to get into. But I think what I'm going to talk to you about is just some of the general principles that I think have made me successful in my career. So this is really my personal story in some ways. And what I'm going to try to also do as I go through these lessons, so to speak, is also give you some backdrop of how it related to the reorganization of General Chemical, the company I was a CEO at, when we went through bankruptcy. And then as we were coming out of bankruptcy, how we started moving the company forward to eventually sell it to Tata Chemicals in 2008. And we successfully sold the company at just over $1 billion when the book value for the business at the time was somewhere around $35 million when we exited bankruptcy. So a lot of these principles that I'll go over were very, very useful and foundational with respect to how we conducted our business and how we achieved some of the success that the team and I were able to get. And so when I use the word we, I'm talking not just a royal we. It's not what I'm doing. I'm talking about me and my guys, me and my team. So with that, do I have a switcher? So this. I guess I get to do it manually. Okay, here's my areas that I want to talk to you about. A few lessons that I want to talk to. First is, and these have got a little bit of kind of a little bit of humor in the titles, and I'll get into some of the specifics about each one of these and why these are important from a businessman's perspective, at least from my experience. The first is to be a Boy Scout. I was actually accused by my mentor of being a Boy Scout early in my career. And some people would have thought that would have been a bad reputation to have, but it actually served me very well. And I'll talk a little bit about why that was the case. Be diligent, bad, and ugly. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that. And really it's all about hard work, but also looking to take on those most difficult assignments and not worry about going after the goods, so to speak, or those assignments that are sexy. But look at those opportunities to change the business, which are really the bad and ugly aspects. Next one is you can't do it alone. We've got a lot of type A's in this room who think that they can do everything by themselves. I certainly thought that. I felt many times I was the smartest guy in the room when I walked into a room. I felt that I could do it better than anybody. But I'm here to tell you, you can't. You have to be able to work through people. You're going to have to be able to associate with people and have people do what you want them to do and be happy about it. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. The next one is go ahead, make the decision. This is about being not so risk averse that it freezes you from making the right decisions or making a decision. The door of opportunities today swing open and close very, very quickly. And I'll talk to you why it's important that sometimes it's necessary for you to make a decision when you don't have all the information at hand, or all the information you would like to have at hand. Last one is no dime before it's time. This is an old saying that we have in my company. This is about a concept I call capital productivity. A lot of companies focus primarily on labor productivity as a measure of how well you're utilizing your resources and how low cost you are. One of the things I thought we excelled at General Chemical, and I think we're bringing to the Tatas, is focusing on capital productivity, how best to get as much out of the dollars you spend in the company. So with that, as a little bit of backdrop, before I go to talk about the first one, in 2003, I was the Chief Operating Officer for a company called General Chemical Industrial Products. It was a company small company, roughly $250 million in revenue and about 500 employees located here in North America. And we were spun off from a much larger corporation back in April 1999 because the shareholders at that time felt we were dragging down the multiple of the big parent company. It was a public company, but the public company, this big parent, was viewed on the street as a resource company or as a soda ash company. And because it wasn't a telecommunications company or something that was super sexy, the shareholders felt that we were dragging down the multiple on the business, and therefore the share price was undervalued. So they decided to spin us off in April 1999. When they did that, they levered us up big time. We ended up with a considerable amount of debt on our balance sheet. I think when we exited April of 1999, we probably had 5 times EBITDA. It was about as much debt as you can put on a business without killing it. We were told, do your best. And essentially, we went out and tried to do our best. Unfortunately, the industry went into a downturn. The soda ash industry, which was our primary business, went into a downturn about that time because new capacity came on that was affecting pricing in many of our markets. And as a consequence, our earnings started decreasing while the debt was increasing. And we got to a point at the end of 2003 that we sat down with the banks and said we were going to have a problem with our covenants. And they said, well, it's time to restructure. And what that means is you're going to have to go through bankruptcy. So over the course of the next year, we would sit down with the banks and the shareholders and the subordinated bondholders and all that, and we would work out a restructuring plan. And in 2003, we would file what's called a prepackaged Chapter 11 filing with the bankruptcy court. And in March of 2004, we would exit that process as a private company owned by Harbinger Capital. And it was at that point that I became the CEO. Okay, so that just serves as a little bit of backdrop as I go through some of these points. All right, be a Boy Scout. I don't know, how many of you have ever been a Boy Scout? Okay, does anybody remember the Scout Law? No? Okay. A scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Okay. When I first started at General Chemical, one of the first things that happened to me was I was called into a board meeting to give a presentation on an expansion and to provide the financials justification for this expansion. Halfway through the presentation, my mentor, who was also the CEO, what used to be a SEAL, so he's this big tough guy, he could swear with the best of them, he essentially looked up after halfway through my presentation. He just said, "Whose brain dead idea was this to begin with?" And just went on to a rant about this whole thing. Management team essentially sat back and didn't know how to respond to it. No one wanted to stand up and say, it was my idea. I eventually stood up and said, it was mine. It's my idea, it's my fault, my mistake. And he looked across the table and he said, "At least you're honest." And from that point forward, my reputation in the company became known as the honest one, or the Boy Scout. And so over time, as my career would go forward, I would be given assignments that would be messy. But I was sent into those roles because the CEO or the divisional vice president knew that when I got there, I would give them back they believed that I would give them back the information that they felt they needed to have to make the decision. So one of the things I would tell you is that when you go into your career, that to have those basic ethical values. One of the most important classes that I had here was a class, I forget the name of the professor. He was an ACLU lawyer. And I forget, yeah, Tom Kerr. And he taught a class on ethics. You tend to blow those classes off because you're more interested in, multiple variant regressions and all that other stuff. But it turns out, what he taught is very applicable in the business world. We got all these issues out there in the business world today about all these scandals and about all these untruths and so forth that CEOs and others have stated and got themselves in trouble. If he would have just listened to Tom Kerr, that would have never happened. And I'm telling you that being a Boy Scout is not a bad thing. So honesty is the only policy, and it's not a relative thing. This is absolute. You state the facts as they should be. You should never betray a trust. All right, got to remember, at the end of the day, when somebody tells you something in confidence, you keep it in confidence. If you've got a fiduciary responsibility to carry out your duties for the sake of the shareholders or the stakeholders, that's what you do. You keep your own self-interest at bay. Full transparency, what that really means is don't spin the bad news. Just state the bad news as it is. In fact, I used to oversell the bad news. So I've told my people a number of times, get the bad news out as fast as possible and leak out the good news. And that served us well. And finally, be accountable. Going back to that example I gave you about standing up and say, hey, it was my idea. I'm the one with the brain dead idea. Take full responsibility for your actions. It's a great example for the rest of the people in the organization. And if they know that you're not going to die from that, and fortunately I survived that, it works out well. Okay? Be diligent, bad, and ugly. What you're going to find when you leave this school and go into a job, you're going to have your shoes all polished, you're going to have a nice suit, a nice tie, you're going to look pretty sharp, and you're going to sit down in your cubicle and you're ready to take on the world, and someone's going to sit right down to you. And she's going to have nice polished shoes and a brand new suit, and she's going to have a degree from Harvard or from Wharton or from Duke. And she's going to be just as smart as you are, and she's going to be just as ambitious as you are. And she's going to want that C-level suite position just as fast as you want it. All right? There are a bunch of smart people out there. And they're all just as ambitious and type A's as you are. So how do you differentiate yourself from that? So what I did is that you're going to find that a lot of the assignments you get up initially may seem to be below you. Shoot, you spent $100,000 on a degree, you should be getting the really good stuff, the strategic planning stuff. You should be getting the stuff about going out and buying companies and that kind of thing. You're going to get a lot of mundane stuff too. My job, I get mundane stuff, but it has to be done. Just do it, all right? Don't whine about it, just get it done. That will go a long way. Managers hate people that whine about their job, all right? It's babysitting at that point. They don't want to babysit. I don't want to babysit. Just do your job. You're going to make my life easier. I'm going to appreciate it. That is something that I have found has worked well for me. I never whined to my boss about what the work I had, all right? Next is be smart. and this is really kind of counter to what I've said there, is that when I say be smart, have the sense, the good sense, to go and ask for guidance when you won't need it. One of the things about business, given this world that we live in today, is we have to make decisions very quickly. We can't waste the time many times for you to get down the learning curve, to come up with some brilliant analysis or to get you understanding about the vagaries of the situation we're in. If you don't understand it, have the sense to go and ask somebody about it. All right? And put your pride aside and learn. And get that into you to go forward. The good versus the bad and the ugly. This is where the bad and the ugly come into play. Everybody wants the sexy job. Everybody wants the sexy assignments, including that woman that's in the cubicle next to you. What people don't want are those bad and ugly jobs, those messy jobs. But those are the jobs that keep your manager awake at night. And things I did in my career is I took on a couple of those assignments volunteering to take care of those issues. And my reasoning was, this shouldn't hurt me because everybody knows this is a mess already. If I fail, then no big deal. If I succeed, then I'm a bit of a hero to my boss. And obviously my boss is going to be very appreciative for me willing to assist on this. So again, look for the needs of the business itself. Look to see how you can move the business to the next point in its pathway to reach its strategic plan. And sometimes that is taking care of the messy, taking care of the bad and the ugly. You can't do it alone, seriously. The key here I have found in my career is that to succeed, you need motivated and competent employees working to achieve your objectives. You can't do this alone. You may be the smartest guy in the room, but at the end of the day, you don't know everything. You can't be everywhere. You can't be making all the decisions. If you try to make all the decisions, what's going to happen is the whole decision-making process slows down. And because the half-life of an opportunity is very short these days, the opportunity may it may dissipate on you and evaporate. And then you don't have that opportunity anymore. And when you don't take advantage of those type of things, it could lead to, at least with your best people, that can lead to poor morale. Poor morale, what happens to that? Your best people tend to leave. When you don't have growth opportunities, you have poor morale, and you don't have really any superstars anymore, that generally leads to poor business results. And poor business results usually means you get to go stand in another line at the government Department of Labor as unemployed. So right up front, one of the critical things I learned here at Carnegie Mellon was how to work in a group. I was so used to being able to accomplish all the work I needed to do by myself. And when I came here to Carnegie Mellon, I think they do this on purpose, although I thought it was a little bit masochistic, is that they would give you more work than you possibly can do. They would just throw so much work at you. And the only way I realized fairly quickly for me to accomplish that work was to work in teams and to break down the workload and have assign that work out to different people, and then come back together and try to pull together the assignment, and then submit it to the professor. And that was the only way that I felt we could succeed. You're going to find that's the case in business. Going back to this bankruptcy issue that we were going through, bankruptcy is actually a very complicated, very expensive process. And if it wasn't, and again, there's no way that one person can possibly get through that and direct that alone. It was my team of executives and myself being intimately involved in that while at the same time we're trying to run a business. Sucks a lot of air out of the room. I mean, it comes to a point where it's hard to breathe because the demands are so high. But at the end of the day, the lessons I learned here at Carnegie Mellon were very applicable. Take the problem, a complex problem, a bigger than life problem, start breaking it down into discrete activities and discrete assignments, farm them out, bring it all back together, and go forward and make it to the next day. Very important. So the next question you may ask is, how do you motivate? There was one class I should have paid more attention to than I did. I actually found the notes to this class maybe 2 years ago. I was cleaning out my bookshelf, and it was the class on organizational behavior. And I'm telling you what, that class, if I would have paid attention and memorized my notes, I wouldn't have had to go through that learning curve all over again. That class was spot on in terms of the things you need to do to motivate employees. A lot of things that we end up doing, we were actually taught back in 1988. All right. So what I'm telling you is think of that class and memorize what they tell you in that class. Very, very valuable. First, you got to be a mentor. Don't preach. You want to listen. People that follow me around on my job today would say, DeLyle, you got the easiest job in the world. All you do is you talk to your people on the phone all day, and you just kind of say things like, yeah, great job. Well, hey, did you think of this? What about that? And that's what I do. And all I'm doing is just providing guidance to my people. They're the ones who are really running the business. I'm providing the mentoring, I'm providing the guidance, and giving them somebody a sounding board to bounce concerns that they may have. Using rewards. Going back to the bankruptcy, one of the biggest issues that we had to be concerned about was retaining our people. People don't want to be on a sinking ship. And so there was a real concern that our best people would start leaving the company, going for more promising opportunities somewhere else. But we needed those people to be able to run the business. And so one of the things we were successful in getting is 15% of the equity for management when we emerged from bankruptcy. We took that 15% and then moved it to what we felt were the change agents and the leaders in the business. We didn't keep it just at the executive level. And we pushed it all the way down to the foreman levels in some instances within the organization. And one of the things I told my people was, let's make sure we give them enough equity that it means something to them. So if this pulls off like we think we will, that it will be a big time. Actually, the words I used was, let's make them rich. Let's get their attention. Okay. And it's magic on in terms of how motivating that can be to individuals. Knowing that they've got a chunk of the equity, a chunk of the ownership of a company, and then they start tying their self-interest to the interest of the fortunes of the business itself. We would customize bonus programs, again, very generous bonus programs where people in the organization could double their base salaries if they met fairly high performance expectations. And there was a couple of bonus programs where we left them unlimited. We didn't cap them. So there's times that I've given bonuses in an industrial chemical company that would be for somebody that's making maybe 100 grand, I'd give them a bonus for $400,000 because they overperformed. And you do that just 2 or 3 times, and it's amazing how the whole organization then will respond. So I have found being very generous with bonuses tied to performance of the company, customizing it to certain strategic initiatives was extremely important. Yeah.
I was wondering, is this financial reward only the way to motivate employees?
I found we'd obviously do the attaboys, highlight people and so forth if they've done a great job. But what I found to be the best motivator, and maybe this is just an American thing, is money. So we would use money as the big carrot. My management style, I was telling this to the clubs I met earlier, is one about hiring good people. I want smarter people than me around me if I can get them. Sitting down with them and deciding what we want to do with the company in terms of direction and objectives. Laying down performance indicators so I can monitor their performance. Giving them the authority to make decisions. And then having the good sense to get the hell out of the way and let them do their jobs. It's all about pushing responsibility down to the people who know the most about the issues at hand. The CEO doesn't. Usually executive vice presidents don't. It's usually the guy who is calling on a customer and the customer says something about product quality and that sales rep then calls the plant and talks about the plant, about how we can correct that. Those are the guys that are really the guys that are going to change the business for you and know how to know where the issues are in the business. So we need to get that responsibility down to them so that they can make those decisions and move the company. And last point, and this is using the word tenure at a university may be the wrong word to use. But in the business world, there is no such thing as tenure. You've got to be strong enough to go ahead and prune the dead wood, so to speak, and get them out of the organization. I have found in my experience that if those, we call them, use a slang word, slackers, if they're left in the corporation, they actually detract from the activity and performance of your star employees. If they don't see you responding to the fact that somebody isn't carrying their equal load in the company, then others will begin to pull back. And so we made an effort to make sure that we would take care of those. We actually have an annual meeting, I call it 3D people development meetings, where I sit down with all my senior managers and we'll walk through the organization and we'll identify who the stars are, what we want to, what kind of career plans we want with them. But also part of that review is who are the reds? Who are those that we don't think we can rehabilitate, and need to be moved out of the organization? We'll be as humane as possible. Obviously, we'll work with them to make sure they get a job. I've got a soft heart when it comes to families. And so we will keep them employed until they find another job. But it's important for the organization itself for that to occur. The next point is go ahead and make that decision. As I was talking about earlier, the half-life of opportunities is very short these days. Back when I graduated in '88, 23 years ago, you may be able to spend a couple of days working on a financial justification on an NPV model, fine-tuning variables here and there, so that the NPV came out, instead of $65 million positive, it came out to $64.3 million positive. The fact of the matter is, the decision's the same. Do it, right? It's going to be additive to the value of the company. What I'm telling you today is that time is much more precious in terms of ability to take advantage of opportunities. So what we want to do is we want to avoid what we call analysis paralysis, where we essentially freeze decision making because we're still analyzing. We're still trying to gather data and trying to analyze that data. There becomes a point where on the payout curve of a business decision that it's so flat that it doesn't matter anymore. Just make the decision and get moving. And going back to the bankruptcy, we emerged from bankruptcy in 2004. By the end of August 2004, which is a few months later, we made our first acquisition after bankruptcy. We were starving, and we go out and do something like an acquisition, take on even more debt. We actually had to get very creative with the financing, a lot of warrants and other stuff that we were essentially trading our future away for this one acquisition. We were in the middle of negotiating that acquisition, and our target purchase price was $45 million, and as low as I can get them was 62. And in the back of my head, I was going, well, it's still positive NPV, but my owners are saying 45 was the max, but this is 62. What should I do? I just made the decision. I said, it's still positive, still the right thing to do. Let's go forward. Let's go ahead and agree, at least in principle. Talked to the principal shareholder after the meeting and said, don't worry about it, DeLyle. It was the right decision. I'll just take the $20 million out of your bonus. But the point was that we acted fast because the concern was that opportunity may have closed on us if we didn't move. And so we moved. The next point on there is don't worry about reaching consensus. Again, it's all about speed of execution. Sometimes there isn't enough time to get to the point where you have everybody in the room on the boat before you make the decision. So what I'm getting to is it's important to make the decision. All right, no dying before it's time. Professor Jeffries, I think it was the professor of strategic planning when I was here. Is that right? Jeff Williams. And we were reading the Michael Porter book, as I remember. One of the books that I still have on my bookshelf. And there was this whole thing about product differentiation strategies versus low-cost strategies and so forth. In my time running a number of businesses today, what I've learned is low cost always wins. You can couple it with product differentiation. If you can do that, then you've got a real winner. The low cost should always win. I'm actually a part owner of a company, a startup biotech company called PDS Biotechnologies. And what attracted me to this business was not only did it have a very novel product, but it had the potential of being a very low-cost product as well. Those two married together can be very powerful. So one of the things we focused on in General Chemical, and this was particularly apparent for those first few months after bankruptcy and after the acquisition, because we were so cash-starved, is that we focused on getting the biggest bang for every buck we spent. On capital or on maintenance or on bonuses or whatever it was, we made sure we got capital productivity. And if you were to compare the amount of capital we spent on our facilities in Wyoming relative to the competition there in Wyoming, you would find that we spent roughly half the capital they did. People say, well, you were starving the plant. No, we didn't starve the plant. The plant has been running at 98, 99% capacity utilization for 10 years. And every year we get a little bit more tons out of it. And every year we got a few less people there running it. So our productivity on the labor side has increased 4% per year for 20 years. We have not starved the plant. What we did was we focused on not just labor productivity, but capital productivity. And that's the stuff they teach you here. I mean, this school's all about being quant, right? All those quantitative tools they give you, all those MVP models you run, all those regression analysis you do, all those OR projects you've done, all that's applicable. All those tools that they give you will help you get the capital productivity, help you make much smarter decisions. The last point is cash flow. Wall Street's all about EBITDA, it's all about EPS. I tell you, from our experience, the lifeblood of a business is not net income, it's cash flow. The ratio I look for is operating cash flow divided by net income. And if that's 90% or higher, you're running a good business. And that's what we try to hit. Net income is just one of the variables in cash flow. If you're managing to cash flow, the business, you're going to have the lifeblood you're going to need to run your business. And obviously, when you're coming out of a bankrupt company, that's very important. One of the biggest struggles we had, other than retaining people, was making sure we had positive cash flow every month to pay the bills. We didn't need our primary suppliers going out the door on us and leaving us, and therefore we couldn't operate the business. So we had to make sure we had the money to pay for our bills. If we didn't, then we were going to be out of business. So it became very important, and it's something that we continue to this day, is focus on cash flow. So I think that's it for my formal presentation. I think we got, what, 10 minutes, 5 minutes? So I'll open up to questions. Any questions whatsoever that you would like to ask, I'll entertain. If I don't want to answer it, I'll just tell you. Yeah.
What about this analysis paralysis? You have been taught that you should research to run at a time and then execute it one at a time. I found contrary to what you're saying, you say that we should execute faster.
What I'm saying is that the question is that what you've been taught here is that you should analyze 2/3 of the time and decide in 1/3 of the time. Is that correct? And that's kind of counter to what I just said. Well, execute 1/3 of the time. I'm just saying that 1/3 of the time, that 2/3 of the time you spend on analysis, it needs to be compressed. All right. Again, it goes back to what I was saying. If you're spending a lot of time trying to fine-tune an NPV, and all you're going to move is the needle from, my example was from $65 million positive NPV to $94.5 million, and you spend a week doing that, that was a waste of time. Okay, the decision's the same. The decision was to do it. The important point when it comes to this type of analysis is identify the key variables that move when they vary, they move the results significantly with it. There's a strong correlation between a variable and the analysis results themselves. And in my business, it's energy costs, sales price, sales volumes, and that's it. All right. If we got a good handle around those things, fixed cost isn't going to move much, And your analysis, that doesn't move much. And some of the other variables, taxes generally don't move much. And those type of things, you don't need to be playing with. It's important to get the decision made. Yeah.
My name is Sergey. I'm first here. You said you're focusing on lowering the cost in all areas.
Yes.
I wonder what's...
Other than my salary, I don't do that.
I want to ask about R&D and practice. Do you use the same approach for R&D?
Yeah, R&D is a different animal. We've actually got within Tata Chemicals a group called the Innovation Center. It's located in Pune, India. I do a lot of blue sky type of research around nanotechnology and biofuels and stuff like that. What we're trying to do with these guys is to have the research be much more directed. When you're a business that's largely commodity driven, it's hard to, in many ways, support a business that isn't moving the company in a direction you want it to move into. So we're trying to get our arms around that a little bit and actually tell those research scientists that this is where we want to be, this is where we are. We need to help us bridge that gap between those 2 points. So we're expecting some kind of return on the investment that we spend there. Okay.
You've gone to a group which focuses so much on consensus building. So are you still able to make decisions at the pace you want to make them?
That was the question was, my company was bought by Tatas, and which is very centered around consensus building for decision making versus the previous model. We were owned by a hedge fund, which didn't really care much about what everybody else thought. And so is there a difference in how we're dealing with that? Yeah, it was huge. And if you actually Google my name, there's a quote that I've got out there, something along the lines of, at General Chemical, we didn't care if we broke a bunch of dishes because we can just clean up the dishes later. All right, let's just get in there, whatever egos we stepped on, whatever damage we did, as long as we got it executed, we'll go back and clean up the mess. Tata's completely different. They don't want to break the dishes. And so there was and continues to be a little bit of tension between the U.S. business, which wants to get on with it, where the Tatas want to make sure that they're making the smartest decision. And I think that we've rubbed off on a little bit of each other. I think I'm starting to win the argument that, hey, again, it doesn't matter if I'm at a $65 million NPV or $62 million, it's still the same decision, guys, let's get going. And they're at the say, well, you got to make sure that you thought about this and thought about that and other dimensions you may not be thinking about before we make the decision. Particularly when it comes to impact on humans and on society. American businesses, at least working for a hedge fund, we were less concerned about that. Tatas are very concerned about that, particularly when it comes to community, particularly when it comes to employees. You want to make sure that those aspects are taken into account. Okay, there's another hand up there somewhere. Yes?
Can you tell us just a little bit about leadership in leading the company and then also in leading in the executive boards that you've been on and how that is different?
Yeah, boards are great because you get to provide guidance and you get to say no and all that, and then you get your check and you walk out the door. No accountability till next quarter. And then you get to ask management again, did you do that? And if they didn't, then you get to beat them up. It's a fun job. But seriously, on the board, you have a fiduciary responsibility directly to the shareholders. You're to make sure that the assets of the company are being managed in the interest and of the shareholders, and making sure that the strategy is not only a sufficiently challenging strategy, but also one that's achievable. It makes sense. You want to make sure that you got the best management team in place. So there's a lot of focus on the management team and making sure that they're the people that you want to be employed. There's a lot of time to make sure that from a regulatory perspective and from a legal perspective that the company is protected. So you got the audit committee, you have the committee that deals with any code of conduct issues that are going on in the company and so forth, and those all bubble up to the shareholder or up to the board. The board's there to represent the shareholders, and it's the management team is coming to the shareholders' representatives to tell them how they're doing. So we're there to protect and to ask the questions that a shareholder would ask. Management's obviously fiduciary responsibility is to execute and to achieve the strategies and to achieve the results that have been agreed to by the board. And so one's about execution, the other one's a lot about monitoring and making sure that the management's doing their job. But I like the board jobs; those are great jobs.
Do you think over the years the leadership style has changed, or is it still the same as it was earlier and now? Since with new technology coming in, the industry moving so fast, has the leadership style changed?
It's beginning to evolve. I mean, out of necessity, we're finding that the businesses have to make their decisions faster. And that includes the Tatas. They've realized that if they don't spring on opportunities or take care of issues fast enough, their competition will. And so it's a very dynamic environment that we work in. That makes it fun and challenging, but only fun and challenging if you're able to respond quickly and take advantage of those opportunities. If you're always second, that's no fun. So yes, there is an evolution going on. That's what I said earlier, that there is some of the qualities of what we had in the United States in terms of our management style is beginning to rub off a little bit in some of the other businesses within Tata Chemicals. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ramya. I'm a first-year student here. And my question is that we hear a lot about success stories of managers who've done the right thing at the right time. But there are still a lot of ethical issues that we keep hearing about these days. So could you talk about any such situation in which you have been and how you handled it?
Yeah. Goes back to being a Boy Scout, you know. There is nothing more important than integrity. One of the assignments, one of those messy assignments, those bad or ugly assignments, as I termed it, that I got assigned to was to go out to an operations in the western part of the United States to deal with what we felt was some fraud that was going on. Inventory was ended up missing. I'm talking about stores inventory. Parts of equipment were walking out the door. Computers were being bought, but we couldn't find them anywhere on the campus, so to speak. So a lot of things were going on, and then we had a manager there that was considered untouchable because she had a relationship with a vice president in the company. So I was sent out there to go deal with that. And it turns out that you know, through all the investigations and all that, and people don't want to talk to you. They know you're a corporate spy. They know that you're there to clean things up, and everybody's got their own interests to protect. But what my job was to do, though, was to get that rot rooted out. We ended up firing the corporate controller. We ended up firing this lady or this manager I was telling you about that had this relationship and rooting her out. We ended up putting controls in to make sure that it wouldn't happen again. One of the things that at Tata that impressed me right off the bat is what they call the Tata Code of Conduct. It's instituted across all their businesses, not just Tata Chemicals. If you know anything about Tata Group, it's actually a group of 100+ companies. Everything from Tata Motors, which makes automobiles, to Tata Steel, to Tata Power, to Tata Chemicals, and so forth. $70 billion, 350,000 employees worldwide. One of the things that they do across all companies is what's called the Tata Code of Conduct. And it's all about making sure that its employees all live to the ethical standards by which Tata is well known. We are required to sign every year that says that we will comply with the Tata Code of Conduct. We have training classes every year about what that really means. And so it just comes down to that the best way to run a business, to avoid all the mess that comes from not being ethical, is to run your business with high integrity. There really is no substitute.
So I believe that we are out of time, but I would like to say thank you to DeLyle Bloomquist for taking time out of his day to come speak to us.
All right, great, thank you. Thank you.